Joining us now, Caitlyn Becker, senior reporter for DailyMail.com, as well as Mike Paul, the reputation doctor, and finally Josh Schiffer, who's a criminal and civil rights attorney. Welcome to all three of you. Josh, I'm going to begin with you as the lawyer in the bunch here. That sure sounded like re-defamation, sort of defamation all over again. How did you read it?
Yeah, that's some doubling down right there. You know, she was roundly answered with her testimony by a jury. At that point, she has the opportunity to appeal, but to double down and basically reject the jury's finding, repeat the allegations that had been conclusively accepted as lies by the jury, that's a dangerous tactic. I think it gives a lot of power to Johnny because he's in the driver's seat with this one.
Yeah, Josh, he said last week he might not collect on the $8 million net, that she owes him. Do you suspect we might hear him say, I changed my mind? Because all he wanted was, to have his name cleared, he said. And if that, if the claim is being made all over again, that's not happening.
Yeah, when he had the opportunity to really take this high road, she directly messed with it. She took his opportunity, and it looks to me like she tried to spoil it. But in reality, from my perspective, he now holds even more power. She can be subject to a resuit. It would be up to him to decide to bring it and dedicate those assets. But it really seems like an odd choice to go out. As much as I understand, she believes her testimony. That is her truth. And I applaud everybody for standing up for what they think is truth. Lots of people are disappointed in our justice system. Remember, in every case, somebody wins and somebody loses.
Half the court feels that justice wasn't done or didn't prevail or didn't exist, usually in every case. It could have been an $8 million mistake. Mike Paul, is there any strategy where this is clever from a PR standpoint? I don't even know how else to ask this question other than what's the upside?
Well, one of the biggest things that people need to understand in this case is that there's a huge difference between publicity and litigation support PR. Litigation support PR, which I believe Johnny Depp had in this case, is very different than what Amber Heard had, which was a publicist. Litigation support PR works closely with a law firm. Litigation support PR understands that a jury can potentially be influenced. Litigation support PR also understands that there's a difference between a young actress that might have millions of fans just in the United States and a global superstar who had one of the highest grossing films, many, that reach every continent in the world and has billions of followers versus low millions. That's power. That's something that could drive influence, but that's not enough to win. So for her to even say that social media helped her lose the case, then you're not showing the power of a jury. You're not showing the power of truth. You're not showing the power of not being trustworthy. You're not showing the power of people believing that you're a liar. She had a bunch, in my professional opinion, amateurs who were attorneys and publicists versus having world-class attorneys who had an expertise in both defamation and domestic violence and litigation support PR. That's where I think she fits.
And a lot of people would have said, just go the legal route. If you're going to appeal, appeal. Put out a statement that's very benign, have it vetted. But Caitlyn, the statement that Amber Heard put out after the verdict came in sounded like defamation all over again before today's Today Show defamation all over again. I just can't understand how anybody could have checked her list and checked it twice. What are you hearing in terms of her, her plans to appeal this? Is that real? Is that going to happen? What's the scuttlebutt?
At the moment, it seems as though she is going to move forward with her plans to appeal, if for no other reason than the fact that she cannot pay the $8.35 million that she owes him. Her attorneys have already come out and said she doesn't have the money. So an appeal seems to be the only way she could go about perhaps not paying that if she's going to kind of bite the hand that feeds her, as you brought up earlier, by doubling and tripling down and digging in her heels about her claims that she was abused by Johnny Depp. Because I do think that he may rescind his, I guess, kind offer to waive that if she decides to drop her appeal, because he did want his reputation back. So it seems like she doesn't have a choice here. And it would also fall in line with her assertions that she told the truth. Her version of the truth is what she believes, and then the jury got it wrong. So it seems that it would make sense that she would double down and triple down and appeal from there.
So I'm just going to, do some libel protection here, Josh, and say that NewsNation has no proof one way or the other that Johnny Depp beat up Amber Heard, and these are her claims and her claims only, and we are not publishing those claims as truth. So I hope that's enough to
absolutely.
have inoculated me.
That's that dangerous game that she's playing fire with. And it really will be interesting to see how it continues, the appeal especially, because as I understand, her insurance coverage paid for her defense, but that doesn't necessarily include appellate defense or proceeding with an appeal. And that could include some rather substantial costs for someone that's claiming not to have money.
Well, and there are the costs of lawyers. Then who knows if they're pro bono and wanting to get their names in the headlines. That's always a possibility. But so let me read a little bit of, I think this is just so critical, these words here. Savannah Guthrie asked the question, he said he never hit you. Is that a lie? Amber Heard answered, yes, it is. And then Amber added, to my dying day, I will stand by every word of my testimony. So Mike Paul, Johnny Depp said this was all about clearing his name. Is it quite possible that this might be all about clearing her name for her?
Well, let me just add something else that Savannah said in that interview that's critical here, since you used those two sentences. Savannah also said, I'm going to read for you that you admitted that you lied. And then she doubled down and said that she didn't, even though there's clear and convincing evidence that she did. I'm so glad that Josh also brought up insurance. There's another important point regarding being insurable. Johnny wants to not just clear his name, he wants to be insurable within the profession of film and other areas of entertainment. Amber is at risk now of becoming uninsurable herself because of the things that she still has tied to her reputation and her brand that are risky. The irony is Johnny was risky before, and now he's insurable, and there's a chance that Amber might not be insurable moving forward for her own career. That's
well, and then there's also the risk
here.
Right. There's reporting today, and I don't know that it's true. It's one source only that, and Caitlyn, maybe you can elucidate this a little more, and that is that Amber Heard may be reshot in the Aquaman sequel. Her character of, is it Mira or Mera? I don't know how to pronounce it, but her character may end up being reshot, and she may be excised from the movie. And I say maybe because, again, her team said that's insane. It's not true. But someone has a source saying that the filmmakers told him so. What do you make of that, Caitlyn?
I think we would tend to side with the people who are putting their name on it when it comes to stories like this. When you have an anonymous source who says, I heard so-and-so say that this is going to happen, and then you have her team saying, absolutely not, this isn't the case. I tend to lean with the people who are putting their name out there on the story. That being said, we've talked about this, even, Ashleigh, you and I have talked about this before, that there was this long-standing petition to get her removed from the movie. Her role had already been shot. It had already been cut down. Do I think they're going to go back and reshoot it? Probably not, because it would cost a lot of money to do that. And in the Aquaman movies, it's a lot of special effects.
That with Kevin Spacey, all the money in the world, I think the movie was called. They excised him out, they reshot it, they did it in a short...
won an award for that one.
Yeah. So
But
it
I
can be
think in
done,
this
right?
case,
It can be done.
I think in this case, they would be more likely to cut her out and not put it in at all, keep the character out rather than recast and reshoot, because they've already pared it down so much. So with enough public outcry, that could happen. So her team might be right at this point, but I doubt they're going to recast it. Crazier things have happened, as you said, but it seems more likely that if they're going to pare her down and cut her out of the sequel, they're just going to completely remove those scenes.
What were you thinking, Mike Paul?
Two important points. Caitlyn, you're a pro at what you do, but we both know that there are anonymous sources, and sometimes they tell us things early, and then they get fact-checked, and they're correct, especially if you're an insider within the studio, number one. Number two, remember my point about being insurable. If there's concern about her being insurable, not just for a film that's been shot, but for anything future, and they're thinking about their brand, those who put the money into the film, there's a very good chance that she might not be in this film. Let's just see what happens.
I definitely agree that she might not be in the film. I just don't know if they're going to go the route of fully recasting and reshooting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Business
Because you can go,
judgment
like you
rule is
said,
going to demand they make profits. They're going to follow what makes them the most profits, whether it is going to be cutting her out entirely or just reducing the role. And they may even try to capitalize on the catalyst that is that change. Remember, this is Hollywood. All PR is good PR at some point.
that's a good. Originally,
this is
Josh, they
this
actually came
certainly-
out and said it was bad chemistry, right? They had a whole other reason for why they were going to work on her and change things around. They said that she didn't have good chemistry with Jason Momoa. But Mike Paul, that sounds like an easy way of just trying to, get out of the way of the ugly,
All PR is not good PR. There wouldn't be a profession called crisis public relations that, quite frankly, has hourly rates that are higher than the highest defense attorneys in the world, if that were true. There's value in what we do because there's many that are in crisis, and this is seriously a crisis. Remember about insurability. We'll be hearing a lot more about that soon.
I'm fascinated by that. And Josh, I want you to just sort of bring the the exposure issue here, because let's not forget how this all started. It was the ACLU that came to Amber Heard and said, let's do this. And then not only wrote the whole thing, but lawyered the whole thing for her. And ultimately, we're all grown-ups. If we sign our name to something, then we have to endorse it. But ultimately, does the ACLU bear any legal responsibility, any moral responsibility, any financial responsibility, Josh?
They definitely took a hit, and there's theoretically a case. It's just almost certainly not going to be brought. Johnny Depp, when we talk about the power he has as someone who has been defamed, allegedly, he holds the power of whether he wants to take action or not. There are, 4 elements to a defamation case, and if he can bring those, he can bring a suit. It just may not be worth the cost-benefit calculus for someone that leads as complicated a life as he does. Like Mike was talking about, the financial instruments behind being a megastar are inconceivably complex. His involvement with major projects is going to be insured 19 different ways. The length and breadth of the contracts involved are so difficult to navigate. He needs to basically be as bulletproof as possible. He's getting to achieve that, and he has the power whether to continue this story or back off it now that he's ostensibly proven his point in court.
So let me ask you, Mike, I said what I said earlier, half in jest and half really not in jest, because I know from doing a lot of legal work on air, live, that I do have to inoculate myself a lot of times from the claims that my guests make, because I am the publisher of this program right now, and NewsNation is the publisher of this program right now. And Amber Heard may have said that to Savannah Guthrie, but I have rerun that, and that's why I gave that disclaimer. I have no proof at all that Johnny Depp hit her. I can't attest to any of that. Those are her claims only. But all of the different media outlets out there, is there a concern, Mike Paul, do you think, for everybody who reported on the English trial, in which they said, 12 out of 13, I think, or so of these cases, of these claims of hers are likely true, and everybody published all of that stuff and spoke volumes and reams of words all about, you know, Johnny Depp's terrible behavior and Amber's too. Do you think anyone else is at risk either from a reputation standpoint or from a legal standpoint?
Well, I think you're bringing up very important points here. And there's another important point besides the insurability that I want to make tonight. Usually, we're so used to seeing many women's groups around the world backing a woman who has a case like this. It wasn't just the ACLU that was involved. They were talking to everybody. You don't see the Gloria Allreds of the world. You don't see the women associations of various sectors of society. You didn't see any major women's group stand along Amber Heard, sit in the courtroom and support her for a big reason. They were concerned about their own reputation first before seeking to help her, because there was an impression with high numbers that potentially she was lying, or potentially she was also a hitter herself, and it was proven in court that she was.
And she admitted it. She's on tape saying it, that she hit him. And then she said to Savannah Guthrie, it was the environment I was in and I was hitting back. And, you know,
she
none
did
of
that
that
a lot,
sounds good.
Ashleigh. She did that a lot.
Yes.
She pushed back. And every time in the interview with Savannah, she kept, anytime that she admitted that she did anything wrong, it was always couched with, and I was pushed to that point from Johnny. She really is holding on to her claims as hard as she possibly can.
It's like those terrible words that I hear so often in domestic violence, oftentimes from men, and they say that my spouse or my partner is a crazy maker, and that's what drove me to do it. Caitlyn, Becker, Mike Paul, Josh Schiffer, I have to leave it there, but thank you all. I appreciate your wisdom. Thanks so much for being here.
Ashleigh.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.